when you want to get to something, first there is a request to recursive resolver. But we have seen a lot of public recursive resolvers for quite some time in the market, and you can use them. And the recursive resolver can be installed on the user's computer, and this user must be advanced, so to say, fairly well, and understands what to do and what to not to do. And there is, of course, a stub resolver, but there you see two devices in one. And the third participant of the process, or in the process, is the authoritative server, or authoritative servers. And they contain domains and respond to requests on domains. What is DNSSEC? This is the chain of trust. The recursive resolvers have the capability to check. So, of course, I'm describing it in a very primitive manner, so in a very simplified manner. So they can check as to what the root server answered to the request, and when there is a recursive request, each next server will be checking the answer with a server of a higher level, and this allows us to achieve the situation whereby the end final answer of the server is assigned, and it can be trusted. And this can be checked by the recursive resolver on condition that the recursive resolver has the function of verification on. So between the verifying recursive resolver and authoritative servers of names, the communication is fairly well protected because we receive the answer that was put there by the user. So, and it can be verified to satisfy ourselves that it was not spoofed. Now, what is the communication of the user with the recursive resolver? Now, if we speak about the recursive resolver, how can you check that the resolver, your resolver that you use, is a validating one or not? So you have to enter the website in secfield.org, and if you are there, then your recursive resolver is not the validating one. Now let us discuss interrelation between stub and recursive resolvers. Now, what is it that we have here? So, over the past time, there are standards for DNS over TLS and DNS over TTPS. Both represent protection over the security channel, and this enables protection between stub resolver and recursive resolver. And the minimum protection is the protected channel, whereby no one from outside can listen as to what you communicate with each other, but also it is possible to have a higher degree of protection. But of course, this cannot be provided for any end user. But if we are speaking about some enterprise network, a network of enterprises where all computers are under some common administration, so here it is possible to verify the certificate, to actually satisfy ourselves that the request goes to the resolver that can be trusted. Well, I will continue, if you don't mind. So the protocols, DOCT and DOH, they protect communication between stub resolver and recursive resolver, but they change the usual schematic, so to the setup. So typically the end, when connected, gets the address of the recursive resolver and can use it. Dot and DOH are not for that, at least for now. And if there is a wish to apply one of these protocols, then it is necessary for you yourselves to take care of that. Thank you. So this is actually what I have already mentioned. The usual schematic looks as this, but we are shifting over to such a scheme, to such a setup. So this is what we are trying to implement. So there is a signal to internet and recursive resolver and authoritative servers. They are somewhere in the internet, and the user uses them using ISP only as transport. And the difference between DOH and DOT is as follows. In usual DNS, so we have this DNS protecting on port 853, and HTTPS is port 443. This is web traffic from outside. You will not be able to differentiate between DNS over TLS and HTTPS traffic. Well, at least for now, there are no techniques to do that. So what are the questions with regard to the protocols? Different questions. DNS over HTTPS is hidden from admin of the service provider. So he does not even see that there are DNS requests going there. He cannot see what kind of requests, and he cannot see the requests as such. Now, the way DOH is realized is implemented today. Well, the stub resolver is one resolver for the system. This is the library of the system level. And if DNS is used, then all go through one library. So, and it operates in a similar way. So DNS over HTTPS, so this is implemented by browsers, the way each network can do, and each soft starts to resolve, well, potentially resolves the names in a different way. So using different resolvers with all possible ensuing consequences. Dot. It is written here that admin can see that there is DNS traffic. He will not be able to see what kind of requests are there, but he can see that there are DNS requests. And for DOT, one resolver is for all systems. And the rest of the problems are common for both. One is centralization of resolvers. If today there are resolvers in each ASP and in each connectivity provider, then in case DOT is implemented, there is a very real possibility of critical reduction of these resolvers, because there will be centralization starting. So for ones, eights, nines used, so, and for redundancy, the local resolvers will start dying away. So centralization, lack of competition, etc. So you see the logical chain of problems here. Next, lack of the possibility of internet service provider to influence the resolver. So this is the double-edged sword. There can be good influence and there can be poor influence. If a provider, with the help of DNS, can provide, for instance, protection from any illegal content, and the user knows about that and has been warned about that, and everything is done based on mutual consent, then this is a perfect situation. But when using these protocols, the provider loses such a possibility. He is no longer able to protect the user. And there is another possible option when the provider, without giving a warning to the user, protects his network through DNS from malware, etc. Not giving warning is a very big thing in itself, but it is necessary to somehow protect yourself. But this can end. And installing various access lists with the help of recursive resolvers is a so in fact rules out these possibilities. Also, there are difficulties for ISP to diagnose user problems. If today the user applies for help and starts saying something, so it is quite likely which DNS he uses and how he uses. That is not difficult to find that out. And if a DNS over HTTPS is there, then it is necessary to start looking into the problem in such a way which software is being applied and used by the user, why he is not able to do something, and so of course it is very, very difficult then to diagnose the user problems. Also, possible leak of data of enterprise from enterprise networks. If the user, and we know that in such networks there are certain internal resources or internal names that work only within the system, and everything happens perfectly well up until such time that the browser decides at its own discretion that it is necessary to request a resolving from outside. And then, so the names that are used inside will be disclosed, and of course there will be other consequences. Difficult for CDN localization. This is another problem that is common for both DOT and DODOC. If today it is possible to anticipate the location of the recursive resolver and to resolve it to the nearest point, then if the centralized resolvers are used, this possibility is no longer be open, and all requests will be coming to you 11111, and from where it came, so you will have no knowledge about that. And potential commercialization of DNS traffic. I don't think that this is a huge tragedy, but this can be a sort of a problem, relatively minor problem. And major recursive resolvers potentially may collect data on requests, process them, and use for targeted advertisements, etc. In EITF mailing list over the recent period, we see a lot of fighting and fencing. Oh, now let me put it this way, not fighting and fencing, but the criticism saying that DNS, etc. And we hear that it is not possible to differentiate DNS over HTTPS from usual HTTPS, and it is not possible to differentiate between these requests. This is what we hear there. And yes, Google, for instance, stated that they would not be combining their DNS over HTTPS resolvers with websites. So if you do not want to have a DNS over HTTPS in Google, then you can stop that on IP address and not on port. But Google has many facets, and Google Chrome, they promised sort of not being resolving DNS over HTTPS by default. DNS over HTTPS can be received from there if the user installed that. So the same thing actually was expected from Mozilla to do, but Mozilla did not pledge itself to do that. But Mozilla has a set of devices, so TRR, and so it is shown here in a blue line. So this is the option that you can install in 5, and then they promise that Mozilla will not be using DNS over HTTPS. So when updating Mozilla, so in fact your browser should not start resolving through HTTPS. But this is the list which is probably not actually really relevant now, but those who provide these services, they are listed here. Google, by the way, well, I don't know. Probably the people from Google will correct me, but what we heard about Google is that Google never announced that it would be providing DNS over HTTPS, but they just sort of switched it on, and it is there. That's it. Jen Linkova. So can we refer to the slide with issues of protocols? These are not problems of protocols. These are issues, questions regarding protocols. I do not really understand how the problem of centralization is related to encoding requests. So if I get it through IDR access and etc., I do not really understand why this is specific for these two protocols. So Home Operator provides centralized recursive resolve, but he can also provide his own. Today, the possibility to give yours for DNS over HTTPS are not present. Just a second, let me complete. If I install in my browser recursive resolve of my operator, then when I go somewhere somewhere with this laptop, nothing will work there unless I change the setting, because the operator has his recursive resolver for his users. From outside it is closed, it is not public, but to the best of my understanding, if we install everything in our browser, so well, this I understand, so what you said about taking your laptop somewhere, but why can't you give your corporate DNS? This is how Android works. If Androids receive the DNS servers of the default mode is such that it will be DHS over TLS that will be applied to this, the Android number 9. So I think that we are going too deep into details. I don't think that what you have said is exactly correct. So just a second. These are not the problems. These are the questions. These are the issues that may emerge. And in English, you see issues of protocols and not problems of protocols. Actually, in my presentation, I said that these are the issues that emerge or that may emerge. If your corporate home resolver uses, yes, but then you will need the certificate. Because there is location there, MacOS can automatically, based on the number in the network, can switch over. So this needs to be done, but it will not be remembered for machines of the corporate network or home network, etc. It will not be using that. On mobile devices, so this functionality is not present. And enterprise data. If I have my corporate notebook, I take it and I go to Starbucks. So with that, this is the problem of administrative character rather than technical character. I think Pavel also wanted to ask a question. I would like to ask you the following question. So this has to do with fixed communication. Well, and mobiles, so they are linked to recursive resolvers. I'm interested to know whether or not there will be any developments with mobile devices. So the soft telephone can ask for ones, but this is an application. This is an application. Exactly. So, but probably you do not want to install the application. That's all right, because a standard or just a user. So here I do understand that you are all advanced users, but just ordinary users. Ordinary users will be using that on their computers as end users. So you will either need to discuss these things vis-a-vis or to follow certain rules of discussion. I'm interested to know whether or not there will be any changes in favor of mobile communication. So when a person buys a mobile phone, he can use a dot and dock. So there will be certain developments. Whatever can be done will be done. And the second question, difficulties for CDN localization, but it is an open secret that Google that develops 4.8 uses CDNs, and how this problem is going to be addressed. So if everyone uses, for instance, for once, there will be a problem with CDNs. So I can tell you that we have CDNs installed, and if as a result of inappropriate work, so for instance CDN in Vladivostok stops operating, our providers, the providers, content service providers, they lose a lot. I do not know how this problem will be dealt with. I see two possible ways. One possible way is to have modified requests from recursive resolvers. certain modification of requests from recursive resolvers to authoritative servers, where the source of the requests will be indicated from Google, and the second option would be to do the same, but not for free. My name is Alexander Tsaruk. I would like to thank Taras for his very comprehensive and interesting presentation, because the topic that you have been discussing is really very, very relevant. 2 years ago, we had a discussion on this issue, and really delighted to hear that there was a continuation of this discussion. I have two very short questions. And my question number one, to what extent it is necessary DNSSEC if the DOT is installed? Yes, it is necessary. This is protection of different things. DNSSEC with a validating recursive resolver will guarantee that the recursive resolver gets the answer that, let's put it this way, the answer answer that the domain administrator implied. So he said that it's necessary to answer this way, and if the validating recursive resolver receives this answer, this means that he received what was stated, whereas DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS is the connection between stub resolver and recursive resolver. This is an absolutely different story, so to say. Then Google DNS and Cloudflare, so you cannot trust them, so it is do that through DNSSEC. Right. Question number two. I'm interested to know how deep did you go into problems of generation of key pair in the SSL protocol and encoding of data, because there are different technologies and hardwares that the corporation, the ISPs, can install that will be recording handshakes and will be recording SSL traffic. So including the route of traffic on with DNS, and thus they will have access to DNS requests. So don't you think that this is a weakness of this technology? Probably it is necessary to streamline and to improve this technology in certain cases. Well, to give you a very short answer and simple answer, so I am unable to say anything on that. Thank you for these questions.